Today was our first meeting considering Senate bills that came out of the last legislative deadline. As we've been doing with these press briefings, I'll briefly go through and just explain all of the bills that we did here and the action that was taken on those. Senate Bill 1083, the author is Vice Chairman Eccles of the House, Senator Newberry of the Senate, and that has to do with the Roofing Contractor Registration Act. It essentially closed a loophole so that certain commercial contractors must have workers' compensation insurance. Somehow they were left out of that, and so we're going to correct that with this piece of legislation. Senate Bill 1091 had to do with Medicaid fraud, and that was presented by Representative Kennedy of the House. Essentially, it expands the statute of limitations where the Attorney General can prosecute Medicaid fraud from 5 years from the date of discovery. That also passed 6-0. In fact, I should mention at this point, every single piece of legislation considered today passed unanimously. There wasn't one no vote cast. Somebody asked me how that was possible, especially in a Judiciary Committee, and I think we've just had some great legislation to consider this year, and as has been the case, we've passed every bill that has been presented in Judiciary Committee this year, and that includes those authored by both Republicans and Democrats. We also considered Senate Bill 1341 by Eccles of the House, and this has to do with municipal boards of adjustment and ensuring that a person who is protesting a ruling by the Board of Adjustment actually has an interest if they're going to pursue that to the district court level. That should clean up the process quite a bit. That passed 6-0. Senate Bill 1515, which was presented by Representative Kennedy of the House, it just updates enforcement provisions of the Oklahoma Medicaid False Claims Act, and that was a request of the Attorney General's office. Senate Bill 844 was presented by Representative Mark McCullough of Sapulpa, although the House author is Representative Jason Nelson. That just updates our statutes so that we are compliant with the Interstate Compact for juveniles. Senate Bill 874 was also considered and presented by Representative Caldwell of the House, and this changes probate procedure and increases the limitation on the valuation of certain property that can be passed by affidavit and does not have to go through the probate procedure, and it increases that from a $20,000 level to a $100,000 level. So a significant increase, but it should help with efficiency and expediency in some of our probate proceedings. Now, I'd like to talk about the two bills that I serve as House author, and the first one being Senate Bill 1113, which has to do with asset forfeiture. We know that civil asset forfeiture has been something that we've discussed quite a bit out here at the House and the Senate this year, and we're trying to make changes to that law. What Senate Bill 1113 does, which I'm working with Senator David Holt of Oklahoma City, ensures that somebody who has had their property seized and then is able to successfully make a claim to get that property back, that they will be able to recover attorney's fees and costs from the state. Again, the purpose behind this is if somebody goes through the effort to actually get their property back that has been seized wrongfully for whatever reason, that they should not have to just eat those costs, but they should be compensated. And the state will pay that amount from funds that are generated from seizure and forfeiture action. So again, they're not having to come up with any new money, so there's not a fiscal impact to the state, which is important in tough budget times, but they'll be able to use other assets that are forfeited and seized to actually pay any of those costs in a contested action. The other piece of legislation that I was proud to author and pass is Senate Bill 1175, which has to do with odometer fraud, and I was surprised to find out how prevalent this is now. What we're seeing are luxury vehicles that are being sold with the odometer being rolled back. Certainly odometers now are not like they used to be. Typically, the amount of mileage is kept track in two different places: on the dash, which is what we see as consumers, but also under the hood in a digital form that people can see when they run diagnostic tests and other mechanics and things of that nature. Certainly on your luxury vehicles, if somebody rolls an odometer back 50, 60, 70,000 miles, that can have a $15,000 to $20,000 impact on the value of that vehicle. And again, we've seen this increasing because of the digital nature it's somewhat easier to roll that back, at least as it appears on the dashboard. So what this legislation does is strengthen the civil penalty, and you can now recover triple the damages if you're a victim of odometer fraud, and also have your fees and costs paid for. And again, what we're trying to do here is make sure that we protect consumers that would be taken advantage of by those who would engage in this type of activity. Look forward to being back here in a week and answering any questions you may have.